Hey, I'm back. And today we are going to be tackling yet another subject. We have moved on from null determiners, null constituents, null auxiliaries, and now we're going to talk about what is known as head movements. Kind of boxing stuff. I broke my microphone. So, what do we mean by head movement? Head movement is a movement from a head in the structure towards another head in the structure. First, we're going to start with the T to C movement, and we're going to illustrate with the examples that are given here. As always, this video is based on Radford's book, The Minimalist Syntax. Without further ado, let's get started. So first, I suggest we give a tree structure to this sentence just to dissect the structure and see what we're going to have there. So the sentence ends, so as always, minimalist, start from the bottom. So the sentence is going to end with 0 with a pronoun, the V, R, N. And then from there, we're going to go up to the V, and our VP, our V here in this case is help, and the pronoun is me. And now I move on to my T, and this is a finite sentence. It does have inflections, so we're going to have an extended projection. It will give me a T, and the T in this case will be hosting the auxiliary will, and then I'm running out of room as always, and then I move on to the T, and then the TP will give me the pronoun here, PRN, which is you. So far we have you will help me, but this is actually an interrogative question or an interrogative sentence. So we do need to extend the projection a little bit further, and we need to go to the CP, and then the sentence should be headed by a C, and the C itself should be if. Yeah, so if you look at this, you see that it's quite straightforward. If is the complementizer, you is the pronoun, will is the auxiliary occupying the T, V is the main verb, which is help, and then the object pronoun is me. Now, what happens if instead of saying if you will help me, we need to say will you help me ? What is going to happen here? Let's try to do that with the structure that we have added here and see if we can achieve the same structure by just moving one constituent to the place of the constituents that's going to be deleted. Let me move this tree where we can see it clearly, and then let's do that. Okay, so if we want to change if you will help me to will you help me, we can simply get rid of the if because we don't have an if here anymore, and then this will, instead of being here on the T, we can have it here on the C, and then it becomes will you help me. So we moved from a head T towards another head C, hence the name head movement, and hence the name T to C movement. T to C movement. Now the question is, why is this happening? Why is it happening? The answer linguists have suggested is the fact that in C you have, if you have a question in C, if you have an interrogative force with the sentence, it's meant to ask a question. What you will have here is a strong affixal question element. So you're going to have it here. This Q here needs to be attached to something. If it happens to have the if, then the Q is happy. The strong or affixal Q is fine. If you don't have your if in here, will should be back here in the first scenario. If you don't have your if in here, then no F in here, and Q all of a sudden becomes really sad. How do you draw a sad face like this? Q now is very sad. What does it need? It needs to attract the closest head that can be transported to the C, and it does it because we call it's a strong affix. It's strong affixal in nature. So what will happen is this will be moved to here, and then in the end you have will you help me. So this is what happens in terms of movement, and this is the explanation we have as to why this movement happens in the first place, and the explanation lays in the fact that Q here is strong. That's why it attracts or draws the other head towards it. So we've seen an example of T to C movement. There is another case of head-to-head movement. In fact, there are multiple cases of head-to-head movement. Today we're only going to look at two, the T to C movement and the V to T movement. Now this is another head movement. It just involves V moving to the T. So we start lower this time and then we move on. Like we did before, I am going to draw the tree diagram for the first sentence, and then we're going to see how we can work our way towards the second sentence. First of all, this sentence over here, if you have noticed, you'll see that it's something that we are quite familiar with. This is from modern English. This is not modern English. So this is something that's taken from one of Shakespeare's plays. So as you can see, the English structure is a little bit different. But why does this sentence look like this while this one looks like this? If we read the first one, I don't care for her. That's what we say in modern English. While Shakespeare, if he wanted to express the same idea, he would say something like, I care not for her. We're going to look at the examples here. We're going to have tree diagrams, and then hopefully we'll be able to understand what happens behind the scenes. So let's start with the first sentence. I don't care for her. So we start with the pronoun here, her. Then we will be moving to a prepositional phrase here, since we have for. The head is for in this case. Then we move on to the VP. Our VP here is, our head V is care. And then I keep going. It's gonna be a T bar since we have inflection, and then a T, and this. We're not going to split this into further heads because I should have the negative phrase projection separate, but for the sake of brevity, I'm not gonna do it now. So I'm just gonna write don't. Okay, it's fine. It's not the point. Just follow with what I'm doing. Okay, so I keep going to the TP, and then here I'll have my pronoun PRN, which is I. So I don't care for her. Now I don't really need to go further with the projection, further up with the projection, because we're not going to use the CP layer. So let's just stay here and see what happened. So what we have here, first of all, is our verb. As you can see, our verb is care. Now, the verb stays where it is. It does not move at all. So we can't really say this is a case of V to T movement. Why is the verb not moving? The verb is not moving because, remember, earlier we said that the will moved from T to C because of the strong affixal head in the C that needs to be attached to something. Let me scroll back to show you real quick. So I said that there usually is a strong fixed head here, which takes the will from here all the way to here. Now, in modern English, we're talking about T's now. In modern English, T's do have an affixal tense, TNS. But the thing with this affixal tense is that it's not strong enough to attract the verb. So this affixal tense cannot just stay there on its own. It needs to attach to something. And the way we solve this is by adding the auxiliary do. That's why it's called an auxiliary, because it helps. So we add the auxiliary do so that it attaches to the tense, and then you have don't. So I don't. And the verb doesn't need to move. Why? Because tense is not strong. So all in all, to recap, the tense is weak, so it cannot attract the verb to satisfy the requirement of having to attach to something. Instead, what the language does is, let's just add a do, and actually it's called a do support addition because we support that tense. Now the tense can stay because it has something to be attached to. Now this is modern English. Let's look at the same sentence. Let's draw the same another tree structure for the same expression, but in Shakespearean English from one of his plays. Let's start. So we're gonna have something that is quite similar. Pronoun, which is her. I move to PP, and a P, which is for. Is everything? Oh, I'm blocking. Luckily, I have realized that I am blocking the view before I continued. Let's move this up a little bit, or maybe here. I don't want to move my head. Okay, let's keep going. Maybe I should write a little bit smaller. Let's finish this 4, then the PP will take me to the T bar. The T bar will take me to the T. The T here, what is it? I care not for her. Oh, what am I doing? I should put the verb first. Okay, VP, V care. Okay, well, here we are gonna actually use the neg phrase. The neg phrase care. So the negative here is projected into its own phrase, the neg P or negative phrase, And then the neg P is headed by the negative particle. In this case, not. So the neg P occupies the position between the VP and the TP, as we shall see. Let me move this a little bit, not you. Okay, we're almost there, I think. So I'll move on to a T bar and then the head T. And the head T also has the same tense. Tense always exists. T and S. It's getting a little bit crowded there. I hope you have not lost track of what I'm doing. Let me just move a little bit some of the stuff. Okay, I think now we're fine. Yeah, I think we're fine. Yeah, you never know how much you're gonna write until you start writing. Anyways, so the tense here, just like the modern English counterpart, does exist. Of course, we need tense. And then we continue to a TP, which has in its specifier another pronoun, which is I in this case. So I not care for her. Of course, something is missing. Now let's look at the tense. We said in the modern English that the tense is weak. In the English that Shakespeare used, the tense was actually strong. It hit the gym. So what happens when you have an affixal head that is strong? It attracts the closest head to which it can be attached. The closest head to which it can be attached in this case is care. So what happens to care? Care gets moved to the tense. And in the end, the result you're going to have is I care not for her. This is pretty much it. And this is how V to T movement happens. It doesn't happen in modern English with verbs, but a little bit before it used to happen, as you can see from this example. I hope this was clear. If you have any questions, just write them down in the comments and I'll be answering them surely. Okay, so those are two things I wanted to talk about: the V to T movement and then the T to C movement. There's something that might happen in the syntax, and that's when you combine both of them. Both movements can combine. Obviously, we can't really combine them in modern English because we don't have the V to T the way it used to be. But if we look at another sentence from Shakespeare, we can see that those two movements were actually combined. And actually, it is a common thing, that not that common, but it's not that rare to see movement being cyclic. And this is the key word here, cyclic. So cyclic means you jump from one head and then you jump again from that head to the upper position for more than one time. And this is known in syntax as the successive cyclic movements. Another sentence from The Taming of the Shrew, one of my favorite comedies of Mr. Shakespeare. The sentence says, "Know you not the cause?" Now let's try and draw a tree diagram for this sentence, and let's see if we can deduce how the movements will happen. Let's get started. Let's take as much space as we can this time so that we don't do the same mistake, having everything look quite crowded. So, know you not the cause. So I'm not going to split this VP. I'm just going to keep it as it is. And I'm going to write the cause. No need for capital T's. The cause. And again, my face is blocking things. Okay. So the cause is RDP here. I move on. Know you not the cause. So we're going to have our verb. So VP, and our verb here is no. Yes, it is no, because we haven't done the movements yet. So we start the derivation from the bottom and then we keep going up. And there's something else that also needs to apply, is something what we call in syntax the earliness principle, which means operations such as movements need to happen as early as possible. So far there's nothing that is telling us that no should move. What you see here is the final result that we don't have yet. It's a pity you can't see my cursor, but I'll underline things as I am going. I thought you can see my cursor, but you can't. But what you have here, no, there's nothing that tells me it needs to be moved anywhere. So actually it stays where it is now. It's not like the final result that we see here. Anyways, let's continue. So after the VP, as I said earlier, we're going to have a neg P, or a negative phrase, which will be a neg. The neg P is usually between the VP and a TP. So I'm going to do my TP projection. Since this is a finite sentence, it's going to be a T bar, then it's going to be then. What is it going to be? Oh yeah, we have our tense here, T and S. And I continue. After this, we're going to go to our TP, and TP is headed by our pronoun. The specifier is our pronoun, PRN, and you not know the cause. But two things here. First, we have the tense. Before even we continue, as I said, we need to apply the earliness principle, which means we need to do the operation here. We said then that in English tense is strong, so it's gonna attract the closest head that its C commends. So in this case it's no. So no will move from here, it will move, and usually in movement we do dotted lines. It will move to here. I continue the derivation now. I keep going. Remember, this is an interrogative sentence. All right, it ends with a question mark. So far I've satisfied the tense requirement. I keep going. After the TP we're gonna have a CP, and our CP will be headed by a C. Since this is an interrogative question, we also gonna have a strong question affix, and the question affix is also strong. It is as strong as tense, and if tense was able to attract no, the affixal question here will also be able to attract no. Now it looks for the closest head that it C commands, which it can use, and it happens to be no. In its new position, which is under the T in this case, in its new position, which is under the T. It's really bogging me down that you can't see my cursor, but I think I need to play around with the settings and fix it for the future. I hope it's clear enough, but let's continue now. So the no will now move from here, and we're gonna do more dotted lines where the no will finally settle here. Now we have no, you, not, the cause. That's it. This is how it happened, and this movement is cyclic because we moved from position number 1 to under the T, from the V to the T, and then we moved from this position to the final destination, which is right over here. Final destination, not the movies. Okay, so as you see, we've seen 2 examples of movements, and then we've seen how they can both combine in what is known as successive cyclic movements, and we've seen an example from English. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the nature of these movements themselves. So what happens when something moves? Do we actually take the thing itself and we literally move it, so we have an empty head here and an empty head here, or just something else happens? It turns out it's not simply just a movement. Calling it a movement is actually misleading because nothing moves. Something else happens, and that's the last thing I'm going to talk to you about. Let's scroll to over here. So, are we really moving? That's the question. Are we really moving? When we look at these movements, are we really moving? The answer is no, we're not moving. Why aren't we moving? Because if we move, we will be contradicting or violating 2 principles that are universal for languages in the minimalist syntax. First one being the headedness principle, which means every syntactic structure is a projection of a head. So let's go back to one of the examples we've made here. Look at this example. So we have moved the will from here to here because of the strong Q. So we've moved it from here to here. Now, after I've moved it, there's nothing here. So this projection here, TP, is now headless. It doesn't have a head. Yeah, it does have a head, but not anymore because that head moved to C. So we are violating the one principle here. The second principle, which is it goes into the same line, which is the binarity principle. Every non-terminal node in a syntactic structure is binary branching. So what we're saying here is that if we move the head here, then the binarity is not there anymore. And by binarity is every node split into 2, as you can see, except for the terminal nodes, the last ones where the sentence ends. So if we don't have anything here, then actually we're not really branching. So the T just keeps going in one straight line. There is no binary. Nothing is branching here. There is no binarity, as you can see. We went straight from the TP to the VP. There is no binarity here. And that's also a principle that is universal, and we are also violating it. So how can we overcome this? What can we do to say that none of these elements are violated, yet the movement, the head movement, is still happening? Whether it's T to C or V to T, doesn't really matter. So what we, or well, not we, but what linguists have proposed and have accepted in turn was the fact, or was the claim, to consider that movement is actually a composite operation. Composite operation means it has 2 parts. So what they do is they take the head in question that is going to move, and we are going to literally copy it, which means we don't destroy the first one, we just copy it. So that's the first step. And of course, we're not going to stop at the first step, because if we stop now, the sentence will be, will you will help me? No, it doesn't work. So the second part is a delete operation. So after we've copied the head, now we can delete it. And then we have, will you help me? And when it's deleted, it's considered a null element in the sentence. This way, we can maintain our proposition that there is movement that happens between heads, and at the same time not violate any of the two principles, being the headedness principle, every syntactic projection must be headed by a word, and the binarity principle, all nodes except for the terminal ones should be branching to 2. Now, what sort of evidence can we use to support this claim? Mainly, we can talk about 2 pieces of evidence. The first one is children's speech. Sometimes it's been noted that when children are around 3 to 2 years old, or 2 to 3 years old really, they will say things like, can the cat can jump, as a question. So as you see here, there's a double can. What this shows is this child is doing the first part of the operation, which is the copy part. So he copied can to the C of the sentence, to the complementizer position of the sentence. The T has been moved to the C, but the second part of deleting is not yet mastered in this child's language acquisition process. So he's only copying but not deleting. This can be used as evidence. So children's speech, or many in syntax, we can draw so much evidence from the process of language acquisition, because it shows things while they're still being in the process of being built as a language or as a mechanism of language. I'll show you the second piece of evidence that we have that supports that movement is an operation of copy and delete. This comes from adult language this time. Adult language, it sounds like saying words that are bad, but that's not what I mean. Adult language is just like speakers that are already fluent in their mother tongues, in this case being English. So if we look at this sentence, for example, should they have called the police? Called the police. I can't write all the word there, so I'm just gonna keep it with P. So look at this sentence and look at its counterpart, which is not counterpart. Should they've called the P? Okay, should they have called the P? And also question mark. The second sentence is unacceptable by the majority of native speakers. They will accept should they have called the police, but they will not accept should they have called the police. This process that's happening here is known as cliticization, and I think we have used it before as an evidence for the null constituents videos. Now what's happening here is that we cannot criticize they with have, because there's something in the middle. We can do a tree diagram and then we'll understand. The last tree diagram, I think this video is quite long, but knowledge comes with a price. You need to... Okay, I'm done with the tree structure. Now I have the sentence here in its indicative mode, not really the interrogative one yet. So the sentence looks something like this. They should have called the police. Now if I turn it into a question, that means I am adding the affix here for questions. And the affix here is strong, as we said, so it's gonna attract the closest head, which is should in this case. So should will not be moved, well actually will be moved, but we've already said that instead of move, actually what happens is just the copy delete operation. So should has been copied to the C. We still draw the arrow anyways, and deleted from its original place. Deleted as in it doesn't have any explicit phonetic and phonological pronunciation. Now why can we not criticize they with have? If you want criticization to happen, you will need to have no intervening element. So between the they and between the have, there should be nothing. Had it been the case that there is nothing, then they could criticize onto each other. But in this case, there is something, and that thing that's in the middle is the deleted copy of should. So should blocks criticization in this case, and the only proper way to utter the sentence in this case is should they have called the police. And that's pretty much it. Today we talked about head movements, mainly T to C, and then V to T, and then we talked about the process of combining movements, or doing more than one movement, being successive cyclic movements. And then finally we discussed the movement operation itself. Is it simply a pick something and move it somewhere else? Turns out that the answer is no. It's a composite operation of copy and then delete. That's it. Make sure to subscribe, ask me questions in the comments if you want, and tell your friends about my videos. That's it, and I'll see you next time.